And welcome to the Industry 4 Community Podcast. I am your host with the most, Walker D. Reynolds. Zacharina Scriven, the rap artist, is here with us today. Podcast is sponsored by 4.0 Solutions and the Brew It Conference. We got some announcements around that coming up here today. Thank you for joining us. Hey, do me a quick favor. If you're watching on YouTube, the team keeps asking me to do this. I keep forgetting to do it. Like the video. Go down and give it a thumbs up right now. And if you're watching the recording, comment down below also. So it helps the algorithm. I always forget to do that stuff. I always forget to announce it. The team always gives me a hard time. Hey, Zach. So what's up, buddy? I noticed you got your studio up. I see key light, new camera. Looking fancy. You got the collared shirt on. I'm still in my gym clothes. So what's up, brother?
And sponsored by Prove It. So
yes. So I had a Prove It meeting today. So I actually had a lunch meeting on the conference for next year. So I'll give you guys just like a quick kind of update on Prove It 2026 and kind of what we're thinking and obviously none of this is rock solid yet. I'm just giving you guys the updates so you guys can give us feedback. So the city of Arlington, Texas, where Dallas Cowboys play, they have reached out to us. They came to the Prove It conference and they asked if we would be interested in making the Prove It an annual show that we would put on in Arlington as part of the Arlington, through the Arlington Chamber of Commerce. Kind of think of it as, Hannover Messe is in Hanover, Germany, and it's an annual show in Hanover, and the city of Hanover in Germany, contributes a bunch of money to that show coming there. So the city of Arlington has kind of asked, would we be interested in doing the same type of thing at the Arlington Convention Center, putting everybody up at Lowe's, the live Lowe's, which is the big hotel right next to Globe Life Park and just down the street from AT&T Stadium where the Cowboys play. So we're currently in talks to move the event there. They had the first meetings with the city last Friday. The committee did, and we're kind of leaning in that direction. We're going to be looking at a couple of other venues. Gaylord Texan was one of the finalists last year. We're going to be looking at the Gaylord again. We're really happy with Marriott, using Marriott for the conference, and I'd like to stick with Marriott if we can, but ideally we're going to put it in the place that's best for the community. That's kind of where we stand. We're also going to, the Prove It conference is going to become its own entity, and it's going to be owned by the Prove It Conference Association, and it'll be made up of a series of, we want to have the ability to make it community owned. So we're in the process of doing that. So next year, the Prove It conference won't be put on by 4.0 Solutions directly. It will be put on by the Prove It Conference Association, of which 4.0 Solutions will be a member. Also, Intellic Integration will be a member, and we're going to talk to some of the other steering committee members about that. Flow Software played a huge role in, Jeff Nepper was on the steering committee, and he's at Flow. He's one of the owners at Flow Software with Graham Welton and Lenny, and they're obviously going to play a big role in the show next year.
I think Sesame as well too will play a big role.
Correct. Yeah, we'll kind of talk about what we're envisioning. So what we're envisioning for the virtual factory next year is we're going to have 3. All right, I'm going to explain this. So the technical infrastructure, the architecture and the infrastructure is consistent. We have already written a digital strategy for Prove It. We have a digital strategy statement, what our goal is, why do we want to be digital? Okay, we have that. We have an architecture. That architecture is non-deterministic. It'll just expand, okay? And it's based on MQTT. Right now, we have a virtual factory running inside of our architecture that is clustered HiveMQ brokers behind a load balancer that are also bridged to a local environment that are also clustered in load balance. So we have a server rack in our office in Dallas, and then we have a cloud infrastructure, just like a manufacturer would, except our office is representing one plant, and then we have the cloud infrastructure for the enterprise, and they are all synced together. So no matter where someone is publishing or subscribing to or from, we have a centralized enterprise management scheme. So we're using the enterprise security module from HiveMQ to manage who has access to what parts of the unified namespace. We are doing
with HiveMQ, I want to look more into that unified discovery and management layer of polls.
Correct. That's part of the goal for.
Because like they demoed it, like I saw like a teaser of it, but like, I mean, that's really what every enterprise is trying to do, is they're trying to configure centrally and then extend at the edge, right? And
so what we're going to do is we're going to extend the virtual factories next year. So right now we have one virtual factory running inside of our architecture. We have many nodes, we have many vendors, we also have many solutions that are producing and consuming on that digital infrastructure, okay? Just like you do in an enterprise. The difference is we had 36 vendors do proof of concept the first 16 weeks. We wrote the digital strategy, we created the architecture, and then we had 36 proofs of concept done in the first 16 weeks. Next year, we're going to actually have 3 additional virtual factories. So the legacy virtual factory will be there, the original factory. It is running right now. In fact, the vendors are using the virtual factory to like demo their solutions. HiveMQ's at another show, I think in Canada or whatever, and they're showing their Prove It session at this other show.
There's running on the clustered broker in the cloud.
Yeah. MaintainX and everybody they're showing off their solutions, inductive automation, you name it. In fact, Travis Cox just published that he made everything that they developed for the Prove It session available in the marketplace, inductive automation's marketplace, the Ignition marketplace. So what we're going to have next year is we're going to have a life sciences virtual factory. So as a sibling in the architecture, there will be a life sciences virtual factory. We're going to ask Skellig to build that virtual factory. Intellic Integration has a life sciences manufacturer that they might want to use. Skellig has volunteered to build that virtual factory. We're going to ask them to do it. We are going to have a single plant virtual factory that'll be in discrete manufacturing. So that'll be 3 root nodes. Last year's virtual factory, next year's life sciences, next year's single factory. And then the last is going to be a multi-site location or a multi-site enterprise. So we're going to end up having 3 virtual factories that the vendors can choose which one they want to do their Prove It session on. So not everyone's going to be doing their Prove It session on the same enterprise. They're going to pick from one of 3. And so one of the things that they'll do is they'll say, our Prove It session is in the life sciences factory. Our Prove It session is in the single node, which whatever we call that factory. And then our session is in the multi-site virtual factory. And the reason why is
going to be really key. So then the solution providers can like kind of curtail their session towards where they are strongest.
Correct. Like some people don't, next year we're going to focus on phase 1, which comes after the proof of concept. And not everyone is, like we're going to introduce ERP. Like one of the things we're talking about is we're going to reach out to Sam Castro at SAP. They do the SAP Edge, manufacturing, whatever they call it, whatever SAP's Edge solution is. And we're going to reach out to Sam Castro and see if those guys are interested in joining Prove It next year, because I think SAP should show off some of the stuff that they're doing actually in digital transformation. There's a lot of stuff.
MII, right?
No, MII is that's the old middle layer. Sam showed it off here, but he showed it off at Mastermind, and I just can't remember the name of it because of what's going on in my memory. But we're going to reach out to SAP. We're going to, there's a couple of vendors.
Digital manufacturing.
Yeah, digital manufacturing. There you go. SAP DM. So we'll reach out to Sam Castro and see if SAP wants to join us. And what's the last thing? We're going to be reaching out to the vendors here in the next week or so to give the vendors an opportunity to secure their spot. So all the vendors who were there last year get an option to be there next year. Every vendor, including the vendors who didn't do that great.
Any vendor who was here this first year.
Say that again.
If a vendor who was at Prove It the first year, if they want to come back next year, they can.
They'll have right of first refusal. So we're gonna run out of spots again. We're moving it to probably 1,000 attendees and a maximum of 50 vendors. We may go a little higher. We may go 60 vendors. It's going to be a function of the space and stuff. But in general, you're probably going to be looking at 50 vendors and 1,000 attendees next year. I want to explain a little bit kind of how we made the show work the way it did this year, and then I'm going to get into the Q&A. I'm going to answer the number one question we keep getting is, how do I expand my digital transformation fluency and knowledge? I'm going to talk about, industry 4 skill sets and, kind of the, mindset and things you got to, how you have to unlearn some of the things that you've learned in order to be able to do this. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute, but I want to give you guys the update on Prove It and then solicit your feedback. Also, can we put the chat, change the thing so that the chat is on the side so I can see it?
Can you do that?
Yeah. You don't have to broadcast it if you don't want to. But it's up to you. But so there you go. Will subsequent virtual factories all follow the same data models? Sort of. They're all going to follow ISA 95 Part 2. So the semantic hierarchy will be enterprise site area line cell, but the Skellig will be freed to design the functional namespaces however they want to. The informational namespaces and the descriptive namespaces, how they deem necessary. And then obviously the vendors can build the ad hoc namespaces, the homogeneous stuff, the way that they want to. But it will follow.
Tell us about how information models are going to play a bigger role next year.
Well, let's talk about that in a later, because that's a whole. I'll be on that for 30 minutes.
I'm trying to get juicy nuggets out of you.
Well, one of the requirements for next year will be that all the vendors use a SESME profile.
But think about what that's doing. That's accelerating the advancement of the software in ISP, like industrial software providers.
We are going, the goal next year.
Features at Prove It and immediately getting feedback from the audience.
Agreed. Jack, one of the requirements for companies using the life sciences factory, bring these comments up as I'm. So one of the requirements for companies using the life sciences factory should be to provide details on how to validate and qualify their solutions. For if they're going to do life sciences, that will absolutely be part of the requirement. If they choose. If I have a multi-site layout and the data modeling is all over the place, this is honestly the biggest struggle. Yeah, Richard, the big thing is, the big thing is when it comes to data modeling is the heterogeneous and homogeneous model. This is one of the things that you have to do. You have to expand your digital transformation knowledge base. One of the things you have to do is understand how standardized models and ad hoc models work together. Okay, so that is called heterogeneous, which is blue, and homogeneous, which is red. Homogeneous is basically wholly standardized. A homogeneous model is wholly standardized. A tank is a tank is a tank is a tank.
I have a question.
Hold on. But I can add in heterogeneous elements. So I can go tank ... I can go tank heterogeneous parameter, tank heterogeneous parameter, tank heterogeneous parameter. And the heterogeneous parameter or the heterogeneous element or the heterogeneous definition is blue. It's unique to that specific tank, or it's unique to a specific definition of a tank. But the homogeneous element is the red component. That comes from the initial class definition if you're a software developer. Dylan Dufresne, do we want to use or create a profile or both? We'll let the steering committee will ultimately make that decision. Certainly they're going to be using a profile. In fact, one of the things we talked about is going to Jonathan Wise and saying, or to Matt Paris, who are both on that working group at SESME. Jonathan's the CTO at SESME, or I think it's the CTO. He's a chief something officer, and ask them to pick a profile that we could ask everyone to have to use.
Well, what matters is that the profile gets actually adopted, and I think that's the key.
What matters is
adopted.
What matters is that we illustrate the art of the possible. What matters is like right now, if I say says me profile, okay, I don't know how many people are watching, 100, whatever, we normally have 100 in a live stream, right? If I go, tell me what a says me profile is to the 100 viewers are on here, or the 10,000 who are going to watch this podcast. Those of you who are watching right now. So those of you who listen on Apple Podcasts, whatever, a typical podcast gets 10,000 views across everything, 1,000 or 2,000 on YouTube, another 3,000 on Apple Podcasts, another 2,000 on Spotify, and then another 1,500 on LinkedIn. When we add them all up, it's basically 10,000, right? If I were to say to the audience right now, what is a profile? First off, you're going to get 100 out of 10,000 who could even get remotely close to the definition of what a profile is. If I were to ask the second question, which is, how does a profile work? What's the value proposition? You're going to get 10 of that 100 who can answer that question. Right now, the thing that we have to focus on is digital fluency. People have to understand, all those people in the room, the 1,000 people in the room, when that profile gets implemented, okay, like when Inductive Automation implemented their profile in their Prove It session with Arlen Nipper this year.
That was sick.
The light bulb went on for 90% of the room.
It was 10% almost like a teaser for next year.
10% of the room knew what was happening. 90% of the room was learning that was even possible. Okay? This is one of the biggest challenges we have in the industry. So when we go back to Richard about talking about multi-site layout and data modeling is all over the place, that's honestly the biggest struggle. One of the things I guarantee that Richard is missing on his team, and I don't know what his role is, but right now I guarantee that you are missing a team that monitors the data models and decides which ones should get promoted to standards. Right now, I guarantee you do not have someone or some people on your team who are monitoring what's being built by your citizen developers. Even if that's engineers that work on your team at each site, you are not monitoring how they are building models, how they're choosing to model, and then deciding whether or not that's something that's worthy of promotion to business, to industry standard, to your technical standard.
Let's say you're working with an enterprise. I was on a call with an enterprise earlier today, and they have, fucking dozens of facilities, but they have, a few dozen that have Ignition already installed. But the problem is it's like controlled by the plant. So like their enterprise team doesn't even have access to be able to log into the gateway. How do you get the plants to be able to, hey, I want to adopt those red models? Like, how do you get them to see the value? And I was saying, like, well, these are your customers.
First off, I don't even accept the premise. So what you just said is you've got members of your enterprise digital team, right?
Correct.
Okay. You have people who work on the enterprise digital transformation team. We'll call it that. They may not call it that, but that's what it is. They're in charge of digital. Yes. Okay.
That's who I was on the call.
And then you have plants that are using Ignition.
Correct.
Okay. And the people who are on the enterprise team don't have access to the Ignition gateways at the plant level.
And I was like, this is not a priority of your enterprise. You guys aren't
correct. First principles are don't do that. Okay. Like first principles is who made the decision. And this is what's going to happen. It's going to be somebody at the plant who says, we want to have control over the gateway. Okay, that's fucking great. You can have control over your own gateway, but you don't have control over the infrastructure. And the gateway is part of the infrastructure. So what you do is you use the enterprise administration module using Ignition, and you have your centralized enterprise gateway that is then connected to all your plant level gateways. They are on one common security infrastructure. You define users and roles, and you be able to access. I have the ability to use the
transmitter module. Would you use the MQTT transmitter module to get enterprise data centralized?
Well, it depends on the overall architecture. I don't have enough.
That was the problem. Is only a third of the plants had Ignition already. Another 2/3 didn't have any platform. So
Well, what are they missing?
High byte.
What are they? But I can already tell you, what is the company? What is this organization missing? They're missing three things:
digital strategy and a partner.
Digital strategy, common technology and archecture, and partners. Yeah, they're not using the same fucking partners.
They don't have an architecture.
Listen, one of the things that frustrates me the most is everyone gets sidetracked on these side quests, and they don't even pay attention to the first principle component. If you don't have a digital, hold on, Zach, please let me finish. Okay. If you don't have a digital strategy, you are going to fail. 100% chance you will fail without a digital strategy. If you don't go to your business and go, what is our digital strategy? What is the 3-sentence statement for how we're going to make data the primary commodity in our business? What you are saying is I am a fucking moron. I am going to fail. I am going to fail. It's not I might fail. It's I'm going to fail. If you do not know why you want to be a digital company, then you are going to have everyone going in 400 different directions. They're going to define digital differently. They're going to define profile differently. They're going to have their own definitions for everything. Number two, if you don't have common technology, if you don't say, here are the minimum technical requirements for all the smart things in our business. If you don't meet the minimum technical requirements, then we must build a gateway to transform the technology you use into the technology we use. That's called a gateway. Okay? If you don't have that, you will fail. Not 90% of the time, 100% of the time. You are going to fail. And number three, if you pick the wrong partners, if you have the wrong partners, you are going to fail. And in fact, you're likely going to fail in the 18 to 24 month window. This is what we've learned. You look, the vendor comes in, they spend 18 fucking months, they get to the 80% mark on the project, and they don't deliver. They don't finish the last 20. Or they do finish the last 20, and then you argue over the contract. That's not my responsibility. That's your responsibility. Yeah, we didn't write down this change order, blah, 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 blah. You will fail. So if I'm on that call earlier, if I'm on that call and they're doing a lot of this and I go, what's your digital strategy? And they go, we don't have one. I go, then stop talking. Get off this call. Go write a digital strategy. You are literally trying to build.
They had a digital strategy, the digital transformation team, but the enterprise clearly was not prioritizing the digital initiative. So, I was like,
expand it further.
Boss,
expand it further.
Her name was Erica. I'm like, Erica needs to be on this call. Erica has other priorities. Like, you report to Erica, but she's not. Why is it that you don't have access to the gateways? Like you said, you don't accept that premise.
Well, I don't accept that premise. And then what I would say is, what gateway do you have access to control over?
Well, that's what I would say. Find the allies. Find the plants that have.
I would say, what gateway do you have control over? Yeah. Stop worrying about what you don't have control over. What do you have control over?
Win the results war.
Win the results war. Sometimes it means that you have got to digitize your domain on your strategy, on your architecture, with your partners. The purview you have control over. Sometimes you got to do that. And if you do it right, edge-driven, report by exception, lightweight, and open architecture. So that means you can easily scale out into the whole business. Okay, you can easily scale out into the whole business. When someone comes along and wants to know why it is you know how people started listening to me? There was not an engineer who worked at my 4 manufacturing stops. I was the fucking gold standard. I was the rock star. At all 4 of my stops, there was no engineer even remotely on my level. Not even remotely. All I was doing was making everybody I worked with look like a fucking idiot who was carrying clubs and using rocks for tools. And that wasn't my intention. My intention was to win the results war. So people had to listen to me. They didn't have a choice. They had to listen. It didn't matter whether they liked me or not. What mattered was that I built in my domain. I was able to do the work of 10 engineers. When I worked in tier 1 automotive, let's use the steel industry. When I worked in the steel industry, I worked 12-hour shifts. Okay. So I would come in and I would work an alternating day or night shift. We always had a controls engineer on staff. When I first got there, we had, I don't know, fucking 2 miles of conveyors and stuff that one controls engineer was responsible for. Okay. We had a stacker. We made steel. So we would melt steel, melt scrap steel, turn it into billets, let it cool down, go into the reheat furnace, come out, reduce it down into some product, angle, rebar, whatever. It would go down onto the stacker. It would get cut to length at the shear. It'd go down into the stacker. It'd get wrapped. It'd go into the shipping department, and they put it in the shipping department. Okay. I was responsible for everything from the reheat furnace all the way to the shipping department. Just me for 12 hours. Okay. My shift would start. I have a clipboard that my supervisor gave to me. And that clipboard would contain 60 items I'm supposed to go check. Okay. Called my rounds. 60 items I was supposed to go check. That would take the first 4 hours of my shift. And then for 8 hours, I was doing break fixes. Okay. And occasionally I'd have a project to work on that I never got done because I'd be up on a crane replacing a motor on some project. We'd be moving to a higher duty motor. And then I'd get called on some break fix out on the stacker. And I'd have to get down, take my harness off, and I'd have to walk down to the stacker. And then I'd talk to the guy in the booth and he'd go, oh, there's this issue. And then I'd go into the MCC and I'd, hook up on, look in the PLC. Okay, what's the problem here? Oh, okay. There looks like we got a broken proc switch out, yada, yada. And I would go, that's ridiculous. It would be like a 45-minute job for me to just debug. And I'm like, I should be able to do that from on the crane. I should be able to just open up an iPad and I should be able to diagnose the problem and head directly to the fix.
But iPads didn't even exist back then.
Yeah, they did. They had just come out. Okay. In fact, the first iPad I used, because I was there until 2010 when I went to automotive. Okay, yeah, because 2007 or something. Yeah, so the first iPad was the first gen iPad. So here's what I did. I literally went and I just took an inventory of all the intelligence. The reheat furnace was all control logics. The rolling mill was a ABB DCS using a custom ABB field bus. The shear, the stack, the cooling bed, the shear, and was Texas Instruments. It was a TI-1 PLC through a control logics. So there was basically a control logics plugin that would plug into the TI that would allow us to see the IO on the TI through a control logics rack. And then the stacker was all control logics, and then the shipping stuff was all slick. Okay, so there's all my intelligence. The first thing I did was I took inventory of all the intelligence. Then I went and I took inventory of all the other things. So like all of the drives, all the drives that were driving the support systems in the rolling mill, they were all ABB drives that had no connectivity yet. All the flow meters were, I don't remember who the manufacturer was, but they all talked HART. So I took inventory. I said, I had to do connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize. In order for me to be able to debug remotely, I had to do connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize. So I went and I took inventory of all the things I could connect to, and then all the things that I would need to spend money to connect to. And I started with the things I could connect to. And I installed Kepware, and then I called Joe Stanzik at Wonder Ward North, and I said, hey, buddy, I need an unlimited license for InTouch, and I'm going to try and sell this thing. Here's my pitch. I basically need $80,000 in licensing, but I need you to give me 2 years before I'm going to be able to get the money. And he goes, I believe in you, man. He came, he looked, he's like, I believe in you. We did it. I spent 6 months connecting everything. I built all the visualizations, all myself. Not only that, I built in daily production reports. I went into the booth and I looked at what the supervisors and the operators were looking at in the rolling mill. And I said, I'm going to automate that in my InTouch visualization. And then I'm going to take a screenshot of it. Every day, I'm going to take a screenshot of it. I'm going to email it out to all of operations. So the shit that they were doing manually with Excel and on clipboards, I automated that process and they had the results. The next shift had the results at the end of our shift. Then all
So
of a
you had an
sudden,
advantage over an enterprise
all of a
team
sudden,
because you're
Walker's
working
not
the shop
spending
floor.
Walker's not spending 4 hours doing rounds, reading temperatures. Walker's spending 4 hours working on projects. Then all of a sudden, Walker's got all these tools that nobody else has. The guy who's working on the opposite shift of me, he looks pretty foolish. The supervisor looks pretty foolish. They all look foolish. They're like, Walker, where did you get? When I installed the first cameras, there was this operator who I installed cameras that covered 100% of the process. So I could access the cameras from this iPad, and I could also diagnose any problem from the iPad. When the operators stopped being pissed off about the fact that Walker installed cameras, they actually would put little signs and draw dicks on my face and stuff. And Walker camera, he's the spy guy. I won the results war when one of the operators nearly got killed by rebar, a crash that happened at stand 12, and they didn't know what happened. And I was able to bring the data to them and show them that what we had was the inlet, the feed guide on the inlet was wearing, and we could see it on the drive before it happened. So when I was able to show them the video footage and the anomaly in the drive current measurement coming off the ABB DCS, everyone shut their fucking mouth then. Okay? That's winning the focused on. This is why when everyone's like, how am I going to scale? I'm like, you shouldn't even worry about scale. You don't even know if you're ever going to get to scale. Why don't you worry about digitally transforming your domain first? Stop putting the cart before the horse. Win the fucking results war.
This is why it happens on the edge.
This is why it happens on the edge. You have to have a mechanism to monitor the thing. You have to create a digital infrastructure for people to solve their own problems. And then you have to have a team that monitors the solutions and decides which of those solutions should be promoted to the entire business. That's what you do. And we don't talk about that all the time. When the question was, how do I expand my digital transformation knowledge? Well, there's some basic principles you got to learn. Like, we're getting ready to do this mastermind mini course. So we're going to do a 10-minute videos that are basically 10 different subjects in mastermind that people are going to be able to take as this mini course. And it kind of introduces you to mastermind. It also introduces you to digital transformation around strategy, architecture, minimum technical requirements, and leadership. Okay. The next step is going to be a longer form, similar to the accelerator for mastermind. Mastermind is how we're teaching digital transformation to people. Everything that we teach in mastermind is the stuff that are the tools that the philosophies and technology and strategies I used at the beginning of my career. Okay. And then, and a lot of it is around the results war, not the theoretical battles. A lot of it is. Purnell's iron law of bureaucracy, if you work in a big organization, says there are going to be people in your organization you cannot convince. And they are going to have the power to stop you. So you don't convince them. You beat them. That's winning. Not fighting, winning. Okay? Richard Fye. I'm basically an SRE IT OT. We do have data scientists who model using DBT at the warehouse, but it's not their sole duty. I'm trying to push the modeling to the edge. That's exactly what you should do. Richard, let me use this example. I use this example all the time. Okay. When Walt Disney built Disneyland and his team came to him and asked him, where do we put the sidewalks? He said, we're not going to put sidewalks in. We're going to plant grass. Then we're going to wait a year and we're going to see where the people wear the grass down. And then we're going to pave it. That was Walt Disney saying, the people who know where the sidewalks should be are the people who are going to walk on the sidewalks. They're just going to go there naturally. You know how we build data models? You know how you build a data model, Richard? You put in the parameters, the inputs, the outputs, and the functions that solve your problem. So who should build that data model? The one with the problem. You want to know why standards bodies struggle with standards? Because it's a bunch of people who don't do the actual work, sitting on a board trying to theorize what should be modeled.
So how do you get 5 different plants who all have the same problem, who, when they implement it themselves, come up with 5 different data models? How do you get them all to standardize on one of them?
What's the congruence? Start with what's congruent across the 5. So let's say you got 5, the old adage is this. The expertise of the team, the expertise of your digital transformation team, the digital data enablement team, the data standardization team, is that they should be able to take 5 unique data models and information models that solve the same problem, and they should be able to build a Venn diagram out of those 5. And guess what the standard is? Where all 5 intersect. And guess where they're not standardized? Where the element that is completely exposed and doesn't intersect with anything else. That's the name of the game.
Or you decide that blue standard should become red.
When should blue become red? When should blue become red?
When it's, when blue has proven itself as valuable.
When blue is built more than once. When Zack builds it and Vaughn builds it in 2 different plants. See, a bunch of light bulbs should have just gone on.
Yeah, because any update that I make is going to help Vaughn, and any update Vaughn makes is going to help me.
Not as long as you're the one who owns the data model. But so what should happen is
the control to the enterprise in order to get the advantage of.
Correct. As long as the enterprise gives you the ability to build your own solution when their solution doesn't solve your problem. One of the blue part. Yeah. Right. One of the mistakes that organizations make is they will try to impose from on high standards. They will try to impose upon high. Standards should serve people with the problem. Your standard should be the logical conclusion for me. Here's another thing. How do I expand my digital transformation? You want to know one of the things that we teach in Mastermind? One of the most important things we teach? Nothing you build should ever make the operator's job harder. Ever. 0% of the time should their job get harder. You should never be using digital to give them more work. There should be a net loss in work for the end user with digital, not more. It's one of the primary mistakes most of y'all are making. You are building shit you think is cool that makes the person who's got to use its jobs harder. And then you're shocked when they don't use it. When you write a standard, when you write a data model, when you write a standard and you say, this is our standard data model, it should be easier to use the standard than to not use it. There should be benefits from using this standard that I get that far outweigh the work to use the standard. This is the OPC Foundation's number 1 problem. Everybody who looks at the OPC UA standard says, why should I use this? Why would I use part 14 when I can just use MQTT? It is so much harder to do it this way. Why would I do it the harder way? Did your life get easier or harder when you started using ChatGPT? Did your life get easier or harder when you started using Google for a search engine? Did your life get easier or harder when you started using your smartphone? None of the things that you've adopted have made your life harder. Do you want to know why one of the reasons Tesla is so valuable? Like why it is that in spite of the fact that people hate Elon Musk so much, Tesla is still the fastest growing car company in the world. And they still manufacture the number 1 selling car in the world. You want to know why? Because driving a Tesla makes your life easier. Your energy costs are lower. Okay. Your maintenance costs are lower. I do less maintenance. The only thing I do on my fucking Tesla is get the tires changed. I don't get an oil change. I don't get service lights that make me go. Full self-driving makes my life easier. Driving a Tesla is easier. It is so much easier that when I drive my pickup truck, it is noticeable I am doing more work. It is noticeable that it's harder to drive my pickup truck than it is to drive my Tesla. At the end of the day, digital transformation, how does it benefit the businesses? In a lot of ways, it does, because you can commoditize data and sell it, and that's a revenue stream. Okay, but it also it automates the process of making business decisions. That's what Industry 4 is all about. Okay, but where does it really benefit? You're freeing people up to solve the business's problems. You're freeing people up to solve the business's problems. Okay, I want to the C8E. That's interesting. Yeah. Hi guys, nice to hear about the standardization bodies. How to keep the balance between practitioners know what to model and interoperability. We need some domain models like ISA 95 or companion specs. Great question. So let me ask you this question, okay? Is MQTT a standard? Like, is there a standard for MQTT? Yes. Okay. The standard is written in a way where adoption's easy. Is Sparkplug a standard? Yes. Sparkplug is written in a way, that standard is written in a way where adoption is easy. It is, and you know what easy adoption means? Flexible. Here, the problem that we have with legacy standards bodies is they try to over standardize. They're trying to create this world that doesn't exist. They believe that if you just put the engineers in charge, we could build the perfect interoperable world. What's the biggest problem with that philosophy? There's no way for you to predict change. That engineer can't predict change. So you've got to leave room for change to happen organically. And if you're going to use a standard should be flexible enough where people and organizations can change. That isn't what happens. They become too restrictive. Rather than telling the people on the body, no, we're not going to standardize that, they go with every idea. We need a standard for Y. We need a companion spec for Z. Someone needs to say, no, we don't. The cost of going in that direction is driving down adoption. Yes, Dustin Symes, excellent. We should put that on a t-shirt. Planning for all the edge cases means you end up planning for none. Yes. This is why you say that's the exception that proves the rule. You standardize for the rule, not the exception. You just leave room for exceptions. When someone says, how am I going to do that with MQTT? Like, let's use a perfect example here. And I don't want to pick on MQTT and OPC, but
there's not really an easy way to do that with UDTs, is there? Or unless they're like siblings with tags.
What Natalia said here. Absolutely. Companies waste a lot of money on applications that they don't really use to make better decisions on the shop floor. And then they try to force operators and supervisors to use them. The dumbest people in an organization, let me say it again. The dumbest people, the most fortunate people in any organization start at the plant manager and go up. But they don't act like it. They act like they're the smartest people in the organization. I'm telling you right now, the dumbest people I meet in industry are in the boardroom. And there is no exception. The dumbest motherfuckers I meet in industry are the people who sit on the board. They don't know shit. You give me a chief executive officer, a chief technical officer, a chief operating officer, a chief digital officer. You give me those four fucking people, and I will show you four of the dumbest people you will ever meet in your life about their businesses. Their blind spot is that they don't know they're dumb. They don't know they're dumb because they created an environment where people are never supposed to tell them they're not wearing the clothes, that they don't have any clothes on. I tell my people, you know how I avoid that? Because the obvious question would be, well, Walker, isn't that going to be your blind spot? You know you're smart. You know what I tell everybody in my company? It is your fucking job to tell me I'm wrong. It is your job to tell me I'm wrong. It is my job to defend why I'm right. You never take what I say as gospel, ever. I don't ever tell any of you to take what I say as gospel, ever. Sometimes I use conflict theory to piss people off out there just so they'll try to prove me wrong. And in the process, they will realize I was right. Do you know the number of people who said, oh, this arrogant prick on fucking YouTube, I just want to prove that dude wrong so bad. So then they set out to do it. They do their own homework. And then they realize, he was right. And by the way, we have hundreds of stories of that. Hundreds. I want to expanding my digital transformation knowledge. Okay. I want to talk about something real quick that this is a lesson that we did in Mastermind. Okay. Someone had asked me, what is the difference, Walker? How did your job change from the very beginning in 2000 when you went into controls? That was right after the fourth industrial revolution started, but we really didn't know that it was Industry 4 until like 2008 to 2012. Like, it wasn't until 2008 to 2012 that we realized 1998 was when the fourth industrial revolution started. So I really was an Industry 3 professional when I started my career. And here were the things that I needed to know. All the skills I had to learn in the very beginning. Okay, so I had to spec and install sensors and devices. I had to calibrate and maintain those sensors and devices. I had to spec and install controls platforms. Okay. I had to write PLC programs, edit PLC programs, and use PLC programs for troubleshooting field problems. I needed to maintain controls packages. That is, swap out IO cards, extend them, add in additional IO, add in functional cards from like ProSoft into a ControlLogix platform that would do something functional. And I had to be able to write documentation. And I primarily spent all my time focused on theory of operation, how should this thing operate, and sequence of operations, specifically centered around industrial processes. That's the extent of my job when I started. Now, the Industry 4 professional should know all those things. You want to hear something funny? My son, Jared, you know what he did at the end to prove it? By looking at mock controls and 4.0 Hero and JPI Solutions, Dustin Symes' company, by looking at their prove it session at their booth, Jared walked away going, wow, there's so much I don't know about controls. He's like, I don't know L1 at all. Like, I don't know the difference between, raw and scaled units of measure. Like, those aren't things that he doesn't operate in that space. Everything that he's doing has already been scaled. He doesn't know how a 4 to 20 signal goes into an IO card and is interpreted by the processor on that IO card and what it looks like in the tag. He doesn't know that. He doesn't know what minus 37,636 to plus 37,636 means. That's fucking Chinese to him.
You're preaching to the choir here.
Right. He didn't know those things. And guess what? Most of you who are getting started in digital transformation, you don't know either.
Yeah, probably don't.
You don't know either. But that was our core. That was our bread and butter. Well, you know what he did when he left Prove It? He said, I'm going to learn all that shit. And he built a lab in our office, in 4.0 Solutions office. He built a lab using Arduino Opta, I think an Opto 22. I think he took one of the PLCs off this board here, a bunch of Raspberry Pis. He built a whole infrastructure that was just an L1 layer. And then he wrote automation. He wrote PLC code for the Arduino Opta. And then he learned how all these devices operated together. And then he actually used Modbus and RS-485 as part of the implementation because he just wanted to know how it worked. All right. That was the industry.
Start to appreciate IoT protocols.
Right. Those are the Industry 3 skill sets. The Industry 4 skill sets are all those things. Plus, you need to know object management, specifically data and information structure. If you don't know what a class is, if you don't know the difference between a class and a method, or a class or a function, if you don't know those things in software, then you are not going to know them in industrial hardware. And if you don't know them in industrial hardware, you won't know them in software. So object management is something you need to know. Okay? Data and information modeling. You need to understand connectivity. What is the difference between talking over a serial protocol versus a bimodal protocol? What is the difference? What is the difference between unicast and multicast traffic in connectivity? If I'm saying things that you don't know, if I'm going, what is the difference between unicast and multicast? If you can't tell me the difference between UDP and TCP, the fundamental differences. What is the fundamental difference?
One is a request protocol and one is a streaming protocol.
Yeah, one is a stream. UDP is throw it out there and forget it, you know? And TCP is deterministic.
Request response.
Yeah, TCP is deterministic. So you need to know protocols. Specifically, which protocols are edge-driven, report by exception, and lightweight. Okay? You need to understand enterprise network integration, specifically virtual networks. You need to know what network address translation is, NATing. Okay, you need to know what a routing table is. I didn't need to know any of that shit when my career started. Okay? You need to understand version control. In software. You need to understand the software development lifecycle. You need to understand agile project management. These are all, plus all the stuff that I learned back then, I had to learn all these other things, which you guys need to learn. But here is the fundamental difference in the mindset of the current digital transformation professional. You are operating under the theory of the overall digital strategy for a business. Okay? So, technology-driven approaches to solving problems. So when, you know, how did we solve problems before? We use Lean, Six Sigma. We use Kaizen. Okay? That's how problems were being solved. Not that those systems they're bad systems, but that's not how you want to be solving problems in your business. You want those philosophies undergirding your digital strategy. Okay. You need to know what the industrial Internet of Things is. It's amazing to me the number of people who can't tell you what IIoT is, even though that video's probably got 100,000 fucking views by now. You need to know what digital transformation is. The industrial Internet of Things is the ecosystem made up of smart things for industry. So anything that can connect. So what is a smart thing? It's something that has connectivity.
It leads to the digital supply chain when you realize the company is a smart thing.
Yeah, and it can tell you about itself. It connects, and it can tell you about itself. That's a smart thing. Okay? The industrial Internet of Things is the infrastructure made up of all those things connected together. And how big the industrial Internet of Things is a function of where you enter into that infrastructure and what you have access to. And just like unified namespace.
A profile is something that defines an information model such that data can be shared between applications in a way that's fully understood.
Correct. Well, let me say this. I would say not just an information model. A profile is a standard that you can consume or you can produce and consume that tells the producer and the consumer of data and information how to produce and consume it. That's a profile.
Is a profile a YAML or is it like a JSON?
Could be anything. Okay, if you're asking, it says me
is a concept.
Yeah. Well, a profile is more than conceptual. All right. I mean, I could write a profile in YAML. If you look at, let's say you look at
there's no standard way of consuming a profile.
Well, there's no standard for profile, but there's a standard for a SESMI profile.
Right.
There is a standard for a Dell Native Edge blueprint, which is a profile. There is a standard for a Docker Compose file, which is a profile. So a Docker Compose, keep that cheapest hardware stack question. I'll answer that here in a second. Vaughn, make sure you bring that one up or whoever. And then I'll answer Richie's question here in a second. Let me get through the rest. What's an IIoT protocol? An IIoT protocol is a protocol that is edge-driven, report by exception, lightweight, and open architecture. If the protocol meets those 4 standards, it's an IIoT protocol. Why? Because a smart thing connects and tells you about itself. A smart thing doesn't respond to your request.
So this is why an API is not an IIoT protocol, because it's not edge driven.
Correct.
No, this is why someone was saying, do you support publishing your information back to a UNS? And then the answer was, well, we have an API. It's like, clearly you're not understanding what.
Correct.
Yeah, it's not edge driven, because you have to make the request to publish that. So you'd have to write an edge software to get that information from the API to then publish it back to the UNS.
All right. So Vast CNC, what is the cheapest hardware stack to start learning? All right. It's a very good question. All right. So number one, I am a huge fan of the Arduino Portenta C33. So this is like a $60 embedded controller. It's got Wi-Fi enabled, super powerful. This is $60. Use Arduino sketches on this. Okay. This is the bottom end. Right after this comes Raspberry Pi and Arduino Unos. Directly above that is going to be Arduino Opta Wi-Fi. Then it's going to be PLC Next by Phoenix Contact. Okay. Then it's going to be the Easy Rack PLC by Easy Automation. You could buy one of all those. You can get one of all of those for less than $1,000.
Groove, you're going to spend a few thousand.
Right. Your next level up, when once you've gained fluency. Okay. Oh, here's the other thing that I would recommend you do. I would go get a Dell Optiplex PC, one of the mini small form factor PCs. You can buy them on eBay for $100 ish, as much as $200. And you want to throw a headless Linux installation on there, install Docker and Portainer, and you have that be the brains of the infrastructure in the center. You'll put an MQTT broker in there. If you look at this lab, I'd love to just fly you here and show you my lab and show you, and I could explain what I paid for everything here. This is a completely smart room, totally smart lab. Over there, I've got a Slick. I've got, I have that automation board over there, and I've got some expensive stuff on there, but you don't have to have the expensive stuff. You get just the cheap stuff. But I would start with a C33, Portenta C33. I'd get an Arduino Opta Wi-Fi. I would get a Raspberry Pi. I'd get an Arduino Uno. I would get a PLC Next. And if you don't want to go up above, get an Easy Rack PLC or whatever, PLC Next is really powerful. Like if you look at the biggest bang for your buck in terms of horsepower and functionality, openness, the PLC Next is really, really tough to beat in terms of what you got to spend for what you get. But once you get into like, hey, I'm ready for operations. Well, I would say directly above that, maybe I'd go Rio. I'd go Opto 22 Rio. The Opto 22 Edge, I think they call it, whatever they call it. But and then Groove Epic. You eventually want to get to that Groove Epic level. That literally Groove Epic ends up becoming all those things I just told you, all in one thing. Plus, you add in the capabilities of a ControlLogix PLC.
Wago.
Yeah, Wago's in there. The problem is Wago. You got Wago and PLC Next, and it's like they're two. It's an apples to apples comparison. So if I've got PLC Next, if you got PLC Next, why Wago?
That's what I don't understand, though, is like Bosch Rexroth has their PLC hardware, but they have their Control-X platform, and they can actually run Control-X.
Yeah, Bosch Rexroth has a problem. They've got a brand problem. they have incredible technology. It's just
software platform.
Yes, so few people understand the power of Control-X. All right, bring the questions back up, please. Well, Walker, I'm earlier in my career wanted to know how you got really proficient in control, specifically various PLC programming languages and DCS. All right, it's a good question. All right, once I realized that industrial automation was going to be my career, so I got introduced in 2000, got my double E in 02, Finished my master's in 2004 while I was working in the mine. Okay. The very first PLC that I was ever introduced to was a homebrew German PLC developed by a company called SMAG, and it's Salzgitter Machining, whatever. It's a mining company. You can look them up. SMAG on, look up SMAG mining equipment. Well, way back when they built their own PLC. So that was a DOS command line interface for the programming. That was my first introduction. And then we had control logics for all the conveyor systems. So we had Slick.
How did you get data out of the SMAG?
You didn't. You didn't. The only connection was a serial connection to the mining equipment. But what I was able to do was tap into the remotes. So they were remote controlled mining equipment. I was able to tap into the remotes and get whether the asset was active or not active. So I knew whether it was running or not running, but I didn't get any of the data off the IO. But as long as I had that state, that's all that mattered. So what I decided, Richie, was that I plotted a course. I said, okay, if I wanted to do a cross section of industry, so I wanted to become like as well-rounded as I possibly can, what industries would I have to work in? So I would need to work in a slow speed, dirty process. That's mining. I would need to work in a high speed, dirty process. I would need to work in a slow speed clean and a high speed clean. Slow speed clean and high speed clean were going to be like lots of motion control. So here's what I did. I went from mining to the printing industry, where I got my first introduction into motion control, all Siemens motion control, Profinet, Profibus, all that. Then I went to the steel industry, where I got my introduction into DCS and older legacy technology, overhead cranes also. That's also where I got a lot of my drive experience. And then I finished up in tier 1 automotive. So I did 5 years, 2 years, 3 years, 2 years. So I had 12 years of experience in manufacturing.
When you say dirty process?
What's that?
When you say dirty versus clean, what do you mean by that?
The environment plays no role in the quality of the product that's produced.
For a clean process,
a clean process means, when you say clean processes, it means that the environment plays a role in the outcome of the quality of the product produced. So like fuel injectors are, what's that?
And why was that important for your journey?
What do you mean?
When you said, "Oh, I needed to do a high-speed dirty process and a high-speed clean process," why was the differences between
because let's say I didn't do clean. I didn't do clean at all. I would have never taken environment into account as a variable for good outcomes.
For the control system.
For the control systems themselves. So, for example, in like clean processes,
or a
in clean processes, you are measuring environment. It is a control variable.
Was the steel
environment
clean? Or
no,
was the steel dirty?
No, dirty. Yeah,
but the printing was clean.
Printing was clean, and tier 1 automotive was clean. Printing was slow speed clean, and tier 1 automotive was high speed clean. So I wanted high volume and low volume.
Okay.
So to answer your question, Richie, you need to plot a course. I don't know where you live, but I lived in upstate New York at the time. So I just looked at what was available to me. And I'm like, oh, I could do mining, and then I could go to this printing company, then I could go to steel, and then I could go to automotive. And that's what I did. Dylan Dufresne, now that Opto does containers, a Rio is full stop starting point. Yep. Teaches different types of I/O, code assist for a real controls IDE, and containers to test out the basics of the software stack. Even self-generates the electrical drawings to teach you how to land the wires. Yep. I mean, the thing is, Opto 22's announcement at Prove It about container support on the edge, big deal.
Wait, it generates your electrical drawings?
Yeah.
That's fucking sick.
I want to answer a question here that somebody had asked yesterday. I want to go ahead and answer it. There's 2 of them here I want to answer. So this one's from Kyron Vanden Brandendeller. So I think he's probably Dutch or something. He says, How do you feel about the latest news about Elon Musk doing a Nazi salute, having a disproportionate amount of power in government, which prevents him from working on his companies, destroying all federal funding, being a pawn to the Kremlin, fathering his army of tiny humans, and the Tesla stock plunging? 3 years after uploading this video, do you maintain what you said about how we need more Elon Musks? On a side note, I don't understand why you kept bringing up the metaverse in a video about Industrial Revolution. Are you sponsored by Meta? NFTs along with the metaverse have not really taken off. Well, first off, the video was 3 years ago. And what I said about the metaverse was that it is the convergence of reality and artificial reality in our minds. That's what I said in this Industry 5 video or whatever. But let me answer the questions about Elon Musk. Okay, first off, everything he said in the beginning, Elon did not do a Nazi salute. I mean, this is the irony. This guy's probably a smart guy too. But he believes Elon did a Nazi salute. He believes that he has a disproportionate amount of power in government. I don't believe he has a disproportionate amount of power in government. And he obviously doesn't understand how the U.S. government works. Only the secretaries can be.
The power is being delegated by Trump. It's all
correct.
The power that Trump has.
He is advising on decisions. So, I mean, Elon can't fire anyone. He doesn't have the power. He doesn't have that authority has to come from Congress, but it can be delegated through the executive branch to say, you go and take a look at all this stuff and you advise me on what to do. I mean, that's all he's doing. He doesn't have a disproportionate power, which prevents him from working on his companies. He's destroying all federal funding. I don't know what that means. He doesn't control federal funding. Congress controls the purse strings. Being a pawn to the Kremlin. I mean, obviously that's an ad hominem attack. I don't give me the evidence he's a pawn to the Kremlin. Fathering his army of tiny humans. Why would I care about how many kids he has? I care about whether or not he takes care of his kids, whether he's a good father. Well, why would I give a shit how many children he has? Why do you care? And the Tesla stock plunging. Let's talk about the Tesla stock. Tesla stocks dropped basically 40% since December. Okay. December of 2024. Okay. I own Tesla. I still own it. Won't stop owning it. Okay. It's just first principles for me. Look at the overall stock market. Like what we are doing right now is we are trying to right the economics of our country. So, I mean, this guy, he's obviously a smart guy. Like if you look at him, but do we need more Elon Musks? Yes, we need a lot more Elon Musks in this world. Elon Musk, he digitized payment systems.
Even if he's wrong.
I mean, think about PayPal. Think about the pre-PayPal world. Now you have 100 copycats of PayPal. Okay, then Tesla. Do you know, I mean, I remember watching a documentary called Who Killed the Electric Car? Why don't you look it up? About General Motors and Ford literally killing the electric car industry in the 1980s. Okay? He defeated Ford. Elon Musk led a company who has defeated Toyota, BMW, Mercedes, every car company on the planet. He has defeated them with his vision. Not only that, I've owned now, I think I'm on my fourth Tesla, maybe third or fourth Tesla. They are by far the best vehicles I've ever driven in my entire life. I don't allow some guy who comments in a YouTube video to change my opinion. You know, I'm a firm believer that you should judge actions, not words. That character is who we are when no one is watching. Okay, I've been in the room there. I've seen how Elon acts. I watch a lot of Elon content. I've watched every Joe Rogan podcast he's been on. I've watched countless hours of him interacting with the media. There is a concerted attack to take Elon down. Do you know when I give a speech, I will ask who here thinks Tesla's awesome? And nearly everybody in the room will raise their hand. And then I'll go, who doesn't think Tesla's awesome? There'll always be one or two. And when I ask them why, do you know the reason they give? No one has ever given a different reason. They always give the same reason why they don't think Tesla's awesome. They don't like Elon Musk. And then I say, what makes you think you're so fucking important that should be the judgment? No one gives a shit whether you like him. Why? I don't even know if I like him. What I do know is that he has helped change the world for the better. Full stop. The world is better because he's in it. Kirken Vandern Brandler 7869, what have you done? What have you done to improve humanity? I don't take criticism from people I wouldn't take advice from. And neither does Elon Musk, and neither should you. If you don't have the life I want, I'm not going to hear a word you say. And I suspect he has the same philosophy. But I would love for anyone to come on. Even Rick Bellata. Rick Bellata's an Elon Musk hater. I would love for Rick. I would love to bring Rick on and we just have an Elon debate. I love Rick, by the way. Love him to death. Have nothing but the utmost respect for him at all. But we definitely disagree on Elon. We definitely disagree on Elon. I do not believe that elites should be ruling the world. I do not believe that. I believe that humanity has succeeded by people bubbling up from the bottom through merit and positively impacting all of humanity. If you allow elites to make all the decisions, then those who've earned it at the bottom, they never bubble up. They keep them down. That's called Parnell's Iron Law. Well said. Finally, a logical analysis of Elon. I think he's a genius. He is. He's an absolute genius. He's an alien. I say it all the time. He's a fucking alien. At the end of the day, there's been no human being who has ever lived who has had a greater impact on humanity than Elon Musk. There may be people who are on his level, but no one greater. Adnan M. Hi, Walker. Can you explain how to increase digital fluency in a company if they're used to the old ways of working? It's like offering a Ferrari to someone without a driver's license. Great question. Okay. First and foremost, Adnan, your organization has a list of problems. Okay. You're that organization that thinks the old way. They have a list of problems. They have things that they want to
use digital to solve those problems.
You use digital to solve those problems, and you start in your own domain. Okay, 12 to 16 week proof of concept. Adnan, I don't know what your role is, but you could, if you want to, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn and we can set up a call and I can explain to you, hey, tell me, what is your role? Where do you work? And what do you do? What's your domain? And then what you want to do is you want to solve with digital. You can solve in lots of ways. I mean, sometimes the organization knows they have a problem and digital is the solution. And you're starting there. You're starting on an enterprise class implementation, except you're starting with one small domain: strategy, architecture, minimum technical requirements. But to answer your question, you do it. The conceptual answer is you win the results war. You don't fight theoretical battles. There's many different ways. Like there's a huge tier 1 automotive supplier. It has over 100,000 employees. There was a guy who worked there who joined us. One company had, the parent company has 100,000 employees, and then they had a subsidiary that had like 35,000 employees all over the world. There was a guy there who reached out to us, and he's like, you know what? I'm in charge of the educational budget here. And what I would like for you to do is I would like for you to create an enterprise training program for our company. We're going to start with that subsidiary that's got 30,000 employees. And we created a curriculum and we shot 10-minute videos that had these little quizzes at the end of them. And everything in those videos were all about increasing digital fluency, right down to here's how your job will change as your company becomes more digital. If you're an operator, this is how you operate today. This is what the operator of the future does tomorrow. As an electrician, this is what you do today. This is what you'll do tomorrow. As a quality person, this is what you do today. This is what you'll do tomorrow. Material handler, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you start there. Sometimes someone has the authority to go, we're going to teach digital fluency to the whole business. You know what? So they did the whole 30,000 employees there. It was such an overwhelming success. I think we did it in 4 languages, right? We did Urdu and Spanish and Mandarin, right? And then English was 4 languages. I'm pretty sure it was 4 languages. Anyway, it was such an overwhelming success. They went to the parent company. We did it for all 110,000 employees. And there were people who came up to me at Prove It and said, "Hey, Walker, I work for such and such. My introduction to you was our enterprise digital transformation training plan. You were the guy on all the camera. The answer to your question, Ednan, is that it starts by solving business problems using digital. And even if you're in charge of some little tiny area, you want to have your own strategy, create your own architecture, own minimum technical requirements, and solve the problems with digital. And then you show your boss, do you want this? And then they say, we're going to scale this to our whole group. We're going to scale this to our whole plant. And now maybe they bring in partners and they do a digital transformation maturity assessment. But a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And sometimes that single step is a little tiny one on your desk. Kumar, my skill set, Industry 4, IoT, Smart Factory, ML, MSc, NX, CAD. I'm young, no experience, doing masters in smart manufacturing and systems engineering. My peers with 10 years experience, I need to be in auto aero manufacturing. I don't know what the question is. Anything else? Any other questions in there? Oh, I want to do this one other question from Zack. So Zack said, 100% on board with the unified namespace approach. One of the issues we face at our company is our reliance on our IT systems, ERP, MES. We entered into contracts with these big suppliers to house our data, and people start griping about the system of record, or how the data shouldn't be removed from MES. I'll continue to dig through the channel for tips on the political discussions, but that is our biggest hurdle. We have diehard individuals who have made it their career to work with these very large systems, and they want those systems to keep as much of the pie as possible. It's because it's corruption. I can't tell you the number of vendors who have offered to build me homes. 6 of them. 7 maybe. Different companies. The corruption in our industry is rampant. Rampant. And you want to know who the most corrupt people in any organization are? It's the purchasers. We don't have purchasers in my company. The people who are in charge of purchasing, they're the most corrupt in any organization. Because they're generally underpaid. It's just like cops. Cops are easy to corrupt because they're underpaid. They got a tough job. It's very easy to grease their palms. And that's not speculation. It's not, if you want examples, fucking give me a call and we'll sign a non-disclosure agreement and I'll list off 20 of them. That's not my opinion. It's fact. The idea of post-processing and publishing back to the UNS is a hard sell because soon after that, you won't need the business intelligence tools we just got sold from these big rock IT systems. Change employers, Zach. You don't want to hear that, but change. You have 2 options. You can try to win the results war in a large organization, but the first thing you have to identify is my company going to make it? Are they the 1 in 12 that will make the leap between industry 3 and 4? Or are they going to get bought out by somebody who did? And if you don't think they're going to make the leap, you make the leap. And then everybody's like, oh, that's easier said than done. I need the job. Okay, guys, one of the other things that we teach is you better save up 1 year's salary. By the time I was 31, 32 years old, I made my first $1 million in 2012. So my net worth was $1 million in 2012. I didn't even own a company yet. So I did my first $1 million working for other people. I invested wisely, but starting in 2008, so I was 8 years into my career, I had 1 year's salary saved. And I was paying my bills this week with money I made 12 months ago. And since 2008, that's been how I've operated. My father used to say, there's no freedom without financial freedom. You are not free until you are financially free. You can't change the world until you have fuck you money. That's why I say it. That's why it's important to say it. What is the point in having fuck you money, just like Joe Rogan says? What's the point in having fuck you money if you don't tell people fuck you? People use money all the time to manipulate you. Zach, that's what's happening to you. you need that job. Don't need that job. You go home and think about how you can not need that job. What do you have to do to not need it? That freedom, that financial freedom will set you free.
That's a mindset shift right there.
And this is just some of the things that we teach in Mastermind. So at the end of the day, we are constantly trying to figure out how do we, we could do these Q&As every week and we'd have hundreds of questions. I mean, the questions that Vaughn puts in here he's sifting through hundreds of questions for the ones that we're actually going to answer. You know what I mean? This is part of what Mastermind is for. And we're trying to figure out how to make Mastermind more and more accessible to people. And that's where we're going to be doing this Mastermind mini course. Next week, the Mastermind Accelerator starts. So Zack's gonna be going through, 12 weeks doing a cohort. So if you want to do that, you can do that. But at a minimum, you guys should be taking the IIoT mini course on IoT.university. You should be a member of the Discord server. You should be talking to the community. You should be doing all the things, increasing your digital fluency the best you possibly can. And then if you want to get really serious about, okay, I am ready to become a person who is going to affect change in my organization, Mastermind is really where you belong.
Dude, there's people on the call who have been hearing you say that for years, but still haven't pulled the trigger. Look, just join the 12-week program. There's no reason not to. And if you like the 12-week program, you can join the full Mastermind after that. Come to
our plan. Our plan is to do this Mastermind mini course, which allows people to just, it's 10-minute videos. So it'll be 100 minutes total. And you'll go over 10 different subjects that we cover in Mastermind. Then that you get your feet wet and go, okay, yeah, this is this is what I'm looking for. This is the education I'm looking for. Then the second step is going to be longer form based on what Zack's doing with the accelerator. And then step 3 is full-blown Mastermind. And we're in the process of doing that right now. But if you look at, since Prove It, we've been inundated with these questions, overwhelmed with these questions, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And the answer for most people is you belong in Mastermind. You belong in Mastermind. You're not just learning from me, you're learning from the whole community. You're learning from the OGs who've been there for 4 years. You know what I mean?
It's an expensive investment, but it's an investment in yourself, and it's more expensive to not do it because you're wasting time and money spinning your wheels when you.
Then we need to make it. If we believe it's expensive, then we have got to figure out a way to make it less expensive. I will say this: people are like, "Hey, why don't you do all the Mastermind stuff for free?" I would. If it were up to me, I would.
Be in business,
right? We wouldn't. But I mean, it costs a lot of money to run 4.0 solutions. It's over $1 million.
The problem with having vendors sponsor the training is then we need to remain impartial, right?
It's over $1 million a year to run 4.0. To do this, it costs $1 million, a little over $1 million, 1.1, 1.2 million. Here's the bigger issue. Okay. There are people out. I'm a values-based person, and I assume if you're a member of this community, you're a values-based person too. That is, you believe that what you get out of the world is a function of what you put into it. You believe that you have a duty or a responsibility to be a leader. You believe that the gifts that you were born with were entrusted to you, that they're not yours. You are just a steward of those gifts, and that you have a responsibility to maximize them. Not everyone believes those things. I'm assuming that you believe that the more blessed you are, the more moral you need to be. You need to have the moral high ground. The more blessed you are, the more successful you are, the more that you can have an impact on other lives, the more you should, positively. Not everyone believes that. There are people out there. In fact, I'm not going to say the fucking guy's name, to exploit people. Well, not everyone believes the values that we are built on. Not everyone believes them.
Someone said approve it because they've been to other conferences that are like either really cheap or free. They said, I like that people paid to be here because then that means they're invested in being a part of the group. And that there's an element to that speaks a lot of truth to Mastermind as well.
Deep in my heart, I want everyone to be part of the solution, but I am old enough and experienced enough to know that not everyone is. Yeah, not everyone is. Not everyone is.
Unfortunately.
You know, at the end of the day, I live my life. You know, anybody who's close to me, anyone on our team, my family, they're going to tell you that who I am on camera is I'm genuinely being myself. I don't talk this way all the time. Like I use conflict theory a lot more in public videos than I do in my real life. I'm much more subdued in my real life. That doesn't mean I can't rip people a new ass. Believe me, I can be a jerk. I don't care about whether I'm a jerk. I care about whether I'm right. Because at the end of the day, right leads to the best outcome. Nice does not. I don't ever want someone to describe me as a nice guy. I want people to describe me as a moral human being, a good person who values right, who values being right, who values morality. But if you're not going to like me because of how I make you feel, that's a you problem. If you don't like me because you think I'm wrong, but I act like I'm right, then I need to do something internal. Because if you haven't been convinced that I'm right in a specific topic, then I did something wrong. That's on me. But if you don't like me simply because of how I make you feel, that's a you problem. Why do you think your feelings are that important? Who the fuck told you anyone cares about your feelings? No one gives a shit about your feelings. Nobody. And one of the biggest problems we have is people think their feelings are important. A lot of the issues you guys have in your organizations with people resisting, a lot of people resist because they're pot committed. Look at Eric Barnstead at Microsoft. You want to know why Eric Barnstead hasn't come off the OPC-UA train? It's not because he believes in OPC-UA. He's pot committed. He knows the problems with OPC-UA. He fucking knows it. He's a world-class architect. He knows the problems. What he's trying to do is fix the problems, then say that they never existed. But the reason Eric Barnstead won't admit OPC-UA is garbage when it comes to IIoT, that it really belongs on the edge and only on the edge where it's great, is because in 2016, he publicly stated things about OPC-UA that he did not know weren't true. He made claims at OPC-UA days in Europe about OPC that weren't true. He probably didn't even know they weren't true because he had only recently been introduced. But once he said it publicly, he was connected to it emotionally.
How do you prevent another standards body from going down the way that OPC did?
You don't.
They all go that way eventually?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The only way, no standards body has even done this yet. But the smaller group of people who own the outcome of a standards body, the more likely you're going to end up like the OPC Foundation. The smaller the group of people. The OPC Foundation is run by 2 people and 2 people only. Make no mistake about it. It is an authority. The OPC Foundation is an authoritarian regime. Stephen Hoppe is the authoritarian leader of the OPC Foundation. Full stop. Make no mistake that just because he's good at looking like he's not an authoritarian, that he isn't authoritarian in terms of the way that he leads the OPC Foundation. He has the authority. Here's the problem with that. It's not that Stephen Hoppe is not a smart guy. It's not that Eric Barnstead isn't smart and capable. The problem is that they don't know what their own blind spots are. Mm-hmm. You must, the higher you go up the food chain, the more you must encourage dissent. There are many times where I will go into a room with my team and I will say, talk me out of this. Hell, and prove it. I literally said to Tanya, you got 15 seconds to tell me why I shouldn't do this, Tanya. And she listed off 10 reasons and I didn't do it.
What
because
do you think
I
about Chesney being a part of the fireside chat?
Say it again.
What do you think about Chesney participating like with Jonathan Wise?
Well,
I know he wasn't officially part of Chesney. He was there on his own, right?
Well, I would love to know what the community thinks of that. I think my personal opinion,
big step, honestly.
Yeah, my personal opinion was that was the most productive conversation about standards in our industry that I've ever seen. And it wasn't because I was there. The truth is, I'm not even sure how important it was that I was on that stage. I think Matt and Arlen and Jonathan would have had that productive conversation without me there. I think my major contribution was the importance of heterogeneous and homogeneous living side by side. Homogeneous being standardized, heterogeneous being extensions of standardized.
We're going to publish the fireside chat?
Yes. In fact, all the videos. So for those of you who wonder where the videos are, the media team has until tomorrow to deliver all the edited videos, and we're in the process of
today, all of them.
Yeah, I think we're in the process of reviewing all those now, and then we'll start publishing them on the YouTube channel. All right. Any other questions that came through, Vaughn, that I need to see?
When is the next album? When is the next album drop?
Are we planning a Prove It conference in Europe? We are not currently planning, but we have intentions.
Fuck no.
Can you put anything else that I need to?
Prove It Europe.
I know the guy that I was talking, the integrator that I was talking about, his first name is not Eric. Oh, right here, Adnan. How do you build a team that will be responsible for digital transformation at your company? What responsibilities and personas should I think about? Adnan, are you in Mastermind? There's a whole lesson on that. There's a lesson. We have a sample org chart, and it's the same lesson where I talked about recruiting and retaining the employee of the future. I even went through like interview questions on how to interview people for your team. I don't think Eric Barnsteadt's a jerk. No, the jerk is an American guy. Eric Barnstead is not a jerk. He's a good dude. He just happens to be wrong about OPCUA.
Isn't it the Hands Revealed or whatever? What's that series that we did? The 3-part?
Yeah, it was in oh
no, that's the other platform guy.
It was like session 5 or whatever, session 6, where we went about, it was JP Manes was the one who asked most of the questions in Mastermind about it. I would argue corruption comes from setting the wrong KPIs and underpayment. If the organization does not have cross-functional KPIs, it's really hard to incentivize the teams to collaborate. Agreed.
Oh, that's a good point.
I mean, what you had, I'll end with this. There was an important lesson my dad taught me when I was a kid, me and my brothers and sisters. He used to say, Walker, when you get out into the real world, there's a lot of noise. You know what I mean? Like, you can't listen to you have to look at the actions and listen less to the words. It's not ignore the words, but listen to them less. You know what I mean? You can hear, but not listen. My father used to say all the time that there's only 2 things you have to know in order to be able to take that step, make your decision. And it's what's the incentive and who is incentivized. No one ever works against the incentive. Let me say it again. No one ever works against the incentive. So just like when we had an open border, okay, the reason I mean, do I want people to be able to come to the United States and like benefit from the beauty of our country? Absolutely, I do. And I even said to my son one time, my middle son, Jared, I said, Jared, we're blessed. You're blessed that you were born in the U.S. We're not special. We're blessed. Don't you believe for a moment that if you were born in Guadalajara, that I wouldn't fucking throw you on my back and swim across the Rio Grande River to give you a better life in the United States? You bet your ass I would, if they wouldn't let me in legally. Okay? But the problem is, it's not that I don't think we should have, the problem is that we created incentives. We incentivized people to come here illegally. That's what the Biden administration did. That's why it was a problem. You can't incentivize it. And we were incentivizing it by giving them money and putting them in, we were giving them free healthcare, and you were creating incentives so they would come. You know what I mean? And that's counterproductive to our country. It's one thing to accept people at the border who are legitimately being persecuted and legitimately need refuge. It's another thing entirely to set up an incentive structure so that they come here even if they don't need refuge. All things in life are what is the incentive and who is incentivized. People never go against the incentive. So just remember to ask yourself that. What is the incentive and who is incentivized? If you don't want there to be corruption, don't incentivize corruption. If you don't want teams working against one another, don't incentivize conflict. Incentivize collaboration. All right. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Pot committed people and organization blocks the transformation of the company. Most of the time, you can't go to upper levels. How do you find the champions in the big organization swiftly? Yasir, they find you. The champions find you. This is here's what you should do. Yasir, we should bring you on the podcast and have you guys show the new features in Maestro Hub. Okay, you should come on our podcast. We'll show the new features in Maestro Hub, the stuff that you guys showed me, and prove it. Okay, we're gonna do the whole. I'm gonna test drive Maestro Hub, and we'll publish a couple of videos on it and stuff. But you should come on the podcast and you should talk about why you created Maestro Hub, and you should talk about the problems that Maestro Hub Data Ops platform solves for all your customers over there in Europe and Turkey and etc.
US too, but no.
But hold on, the change agents are going to find you. Yeah, talk about what's happening, in Detroit right now. I mean, I know you got a bunch of customers in tier 1 automotive and automotive in the automotive sector here in the United States. You talk about those problems that you're solving and your values, and those change agents and big organizations are going to find you. You don't have to go try and find them. They're a needle in a haystack. You have to wave the flame and respond to the moths who come. Go ahead, Zach. Wait, hold on. Let me do the tariffs thing. How do you see the tariffs between U.S. and Canada? How manufacturing will be affected? How do you see the future of the auto industry in Canada? All right. The tariffs are a negotiating tactic. Like, you got to stop listening to the media, man. Are there going to be either Canadian and Mexican, either they're going to secure the border and prevent fentanyl and illegal immigrants from crossing the border from their nation into our nation, or we are going to punish them with tariffs. Canada is going to do exactly what Donald Trump wants them to do. Let me make no mistake about it. Canada has no leg to stand on. And I love Canada. But you need to know when you don't hold the fucking cards. Mexico doesn't hold the cards. Canada doesn't hold the cards. The European Union doesn't hold the cards. The most powerful nation on the planet is the United States. It's not even fucking close. Economically, militarily, when it comes to innovation, when it comes to freedom, when it comes to freedom of speech, the United States is the gold standard. We don't have to build walls to keep people in. Canada has no leg to stand on. Absolutely none whatsoever. You look at what the premier in Ontario is doing. Okay, he's saying that he's going to slap a 25% tariff on electricity that is bought by Minnesota, New York, Vermont. Do you think Donald Trump cares? Nope, not at all. Do you want to know why New York State has to buy electricity from Canada? Because progressives in New York State, environmentalists in New York State, made New York State close all their power plants. By the way, one of those power plants was in my hometown, and I spoke out against it. I saw the impact closing that power plant had on my community. Our community lost $25 million per year annually in tax revenue. Why? Because those environmentalists wanted to make themselves feel better. Guess what? The electricity has to be generated. It's being generated by Canadians. And now you gave the Canadians the power to slap a 25% tariff on it. It's at the end of the day, tariffs are a negotiating tactic. What's going to happen? Canada is going to respond to the administration. I mean, does Canada have a bunch of people from the United States smuggling fentanyl into Canada? No. Does Mexico have a bunch of drug dealers smuggling drugs into Mexico? No. You want to know what Mexico has? Mexico has the same people who are smuggling drugs in the United States are then getting guns in the United States and smuggling them back into Mexico. But that's not a U.S. problem. That's the people you're allowing in Mexico to smuggle to our country, pick up the guns, and go back. The Mexican authorities do nothing about the tunnels on the border. They do nothing. The police there, they're paid off by the cartels. What Trump is doing is Trump is making it more painful for Mexico to not do anything. He is creating an incentive for them to fix the problem. He is creating an incentive for Canada to fix the problem. Why isn't anyone asking, why are the tariffs in China only 10%? Why are they not 25? No one's asked the question. It's because no one's doing their homework. They're getting their information from MSNBC. They're just listening to talking heads.
So the incentive is not as strong?
Correct. The concessions we need from China are a lot less than the concessions we need from Canada and Mexico right now. That's it. That's all it is. It's a negotiating. It's just a lever. That's all it is.
Oh, I figured out. I remember what I was going to say.
Yeah.
All right. I had a really productive conversation with the team today. I want to have more conversations with manufacturers about your problems that you're facing, digital transformation. If you're trying to do this, you're struggling. I like jumping on a call, asking you a few questions, see if we could kind of dial in on what the problem is. And so, yeah, if that's you, reach out to me. I want to jump on more of these free digital strategy calls.
All right, Vaughn, one last question. We'll answer one more. Now I got to eat. Get a drink.
I'm hungry too.
Will you make part 2 of how you implemented UNS at the salt mine? Yes, absolutely. In fact, I shot the video. I just didn't like it. That's why we didn't release it.
Will you do Prove It Conference 2026?
Show me the question. Bring the questions up on the side. There's a bunch of people yelling at me, don't talk about politics. I mean, I'm only answering the question. No,
will
not
ERP
Eric Kimmerling.
play a larger role at the conference?
I love Eric Kimmerling. It's definitely not Eric Kimmerling. Eric is a ERP guy. Holly Cummings. I feel like both of you make really good points, to be fair. Do we?
Both who? Me?
All right. With that, like, subscribe, comment down below. Thank you guys for joining us. If you're interested in the accelerator program for Mastermind, the discount's still available through tomorrow night, right? Okay. Sorry. They wanted me to do the plug. Got to do the plug. All right. With that, see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Word.